except for you, Madam President, because you have to join me on stage for an interview. Apologies. Okay, so please go ahead and eat, and we will go ahead with the chat. Yes, chat. Madam President, it is so wonderful to have you with us this year. As readers of Brussels Playbook probably know, we've been waiting a little while to interview you. We even at one point included a little counter of the days since we last got an interview with you, and I'm very pleased to say we can now reset the clock on that, and so it goes to zero.
Yes, because of course I was waiting for a very special event to come.
Exactly.
And as you told me, this is the first black tie event you ever did, so I thought I'd come.
That's how you get the President of Europe. So, okay, I told you guys, black tie, that worked. So, some people have made the case that you are the most powerful, maybe the most effective EU president ever. What are you most proud of?
I'm incredibly proud and grateful that I can serve this fantastic European Union. Because this is, for me, being the president of the European Commission, it is like a circle closing in my life, because I was born here. I grew up here in Brussels. When I was 13, we moved only to Germany. And when we came here to the Africa Museum, I told you that as a child, I've been here many, many times in the Africa Museum. And I've checked on the stuffed animals they have here, and they are the same like almost 50 years ago. So it's wonderful. If you have time, go and have a look at the giraffe, at the lion, stuffed animals that come from my childhood. So it's for me like coming home. And I was raised, of course, with this European idea. My father was a civil servant here in the European Commission. So this is something where I'm incredibly grateful and proud of.
So on the other side, what will you do differently in your second term?
Well, I think there are two things important. First of all, keep the direction of travel for the big topics we've set out at the beginning of this mandate. That is the European Green Deal, that's the topic of digitalization, and it is resilience. Although I must say I never expected that resilience will be defined the way it had to be defined then during this mandate. That's point number one, but the second point is also, besides the continuity, the world is dictating partially what the tasks of the day are. So this always you have to integrate in your political life too. So quite challenging.
One of the great minds in European politics recently made what I thought was a very astute observation to me, that Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine really united Europe like almost nothing else has done, but that the horrific events of October 7th in Israel and the subsequent war have been almost equally divisive. So what do you think of that? Do you agree with that, or what's your take on this idea of one being very, very uniting and one being much more divisive?
It is true that we are impressively united when it comes to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, but behind that is hard work. So it's not as if 27 member states always have the same opinion on different topics, like, for example, sanctions, if I just take one topic, or military capabilities to be delivered to Ukraine. So beside that, or behind that, is hard work. The horrible eruption of violence in the Middle East took us completely off guard. Nobody was prepared. In Ukraine, we had time to prepare because we could read the signs of Putin building up the troops around Ukraine months before. And My impression was at the beginning of the Middle East crisis that for all of us, deep down, our history came up again. And unity is not something which you have from the very beginning on. Unity you have always to work hard for. And that's what you could observe we did also here in the European Union with intense debates, rightly so. But at the end of the day, we have common positions, the European Council conclusions, for example, where Europe, as always, has fierce debates to live through, but then come to one direction of travel, one common position. And this is something which I love about the European Union, because we are united in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinions. But in the very end, when it comes to find a direction of travel, to have a common position, we always are able to make it again, and this is what we're working for.
Do you believe that a two-state solution is still possible, and what would Europe's role be in helping to bring that about?
Yeah, it is almost dramatic that because of the terrible events in the Middle East, the two-state solution is much more probable than it was months or years ago. And yes, there must be a political solution. There must be a perspective, and this perspective is the two-state solution. And it is interesting, I've been speaking a lot to the Israelis, but also to al-Sisi, to the King of Jordan. I've had a phone call with Abbas. There seems to, slowly but surely, the formation of common ideas, how with a broad brush this could be. Hamas, it cannot be a safe haven for the terror group Hamas anymore in Gaza. Hamas cannot be part of the governance structure, no way. An independent Palestinian state has to have the Palestinian Authority governing West Bank and Gaza.
1967 borders, East Jerusalem.
Well, these are points, I think, that have to be discussed. So I said there are many, many questions open, but I think this is now or never to seize the moment. And when you're asking about Europe's role, we have never been the first fiddle in the Middle East, but we are, for example, the biggest donor for the Palestinian Authority. We're the biggest donor to Gaza since many, many years. So we have leverage, and we have a role to play. And if there's anything where the European Union has a vast experience, then it is how to develop countries towards democracies, and then later on integrate them in the European Union. So this capacity building is something where we have a vast experience, and we can bring in if needed, in building up two different independent states.
On the other side, do you worry about fatigue in Europe and America when it comes to supporting Ukraine in its fight, especially with the Middle East in flames right now?
Actually, no, it's the opposite. I'm impressed to see how very clear the European people see the need to support Ukraine since now, 21 months. And very important now is that we show stamina, that we show perseverance, and that we are aware of the fact, or let's turn it the other way around, we should never forget where we come from. When Putin attacked Ukraine, many thought that it will take a few days for Kyiv to fall. This has not happened. On the contrary, if you look now at where Putin stands, he has lost 50% of the territory he had initially taken in. Ukraine is stronger as a nation than ever before. Ukraine has defended its integrity and territorial sovereignty to an extent that is deeply impressive for all of us. This is a big success forward. Today, Finland is a member of NATO. Finland with its long border with Russia. Russia has lost almost half of its military capabilities. Thousands and thousands and thousands of young men have died, Russian soldiers. Russia has lost its clout in the international community and in the international or global economy. So I think we should never forget what we have achieved so far, and therefore stamina, perseverance, long breath is now the motto of the hour.
When it comes to Ukraine enlargement, do you really think that Ukraine can join the European Union? And if so, when? How?
I've been now, I think, 6 times in Kiev, and each time I'm deeply impressed how deep the longing of Ukraine is to join the European Union, to be part of the European Union. And Zelensky often tells me that this is the light at the end of the tunnel that keeps the soldiers motivated and the people in the bunker also the spirits high, that they know where they want to be one day. Second point, the accession to the European Union has always been and is a merits-based process. In other words, it depends on the country itself, how fast it reforms and how fast it changes towards the European Union, the speed of the accession. And I must say, to see the deep and structured reforms that Ukraine is doing while fighting a war, an existential war, is to me deeply impressive. So it's in their hands, and they have fulfilled all the necessary requirements for almost all the 7 steps we asked them to do. Last time when they became a candidate country. Now we will see what the European Council will decide on mid-December. But I can only tell by experience and with my services really working hard with Ukraine that it is deeply impressive the speed at which they are reforming their country because they want to join this European Union.
Speaking of this European Union, do you believe that Britain could ever rejoin this European Union?
That who?
Britain. Who? It's a small country with an ambassador sitting right there. It's a small pirate island off the coast of France. UK. United Kingdom. Could it rejoin the European Union?
Ambassador. So, Ambassador, you know my position. First of all, thanks God, with the Windsor Agreement, we had a new beginning for old friends. Very important. And then I must say, I keep telling my children, you have to fix it. We goofed it up. You have to fix it. So I think here, too, the direction of travel, my personal opinion, is clear.
Do you believe we're in another Cold War already between autocratic states and democracies, liberal democracies? Would you say that that's where we're at already?
No, because there are intensive debates, and this is good, so that we discuss with each other. We fight verbally with each other. We have different opinion. But it is good that we are talking to each other and that we are competing with each other to show what kind of governance brings the best results.
What do you think, and I'm not really specifically talking about European Union perhaps, but what do you think Europe would do if China invaded Taiwan?
I don't think that we will solve this question here tonight.
I'm looking at the headline, President of Europe vows to... Anyway, okay. You speak. How should you... Fair enough. How should you... So make it easier. How do you think Europe should deal with China? I mean, you've been very quite, I would argue, very clear, more clear than most European leaders on the topic of China. How would you characterize the way that Europe should deal with China, especially, I would argue, a declining China?
So first of all, I think it's very important to get China right and therefore to know about China, what's going on. On one hand, we see a China domestically that is challenged, an aging society, demography, a severe housing crisis, slowing down growth, unexpected unemployment because the young generation leaving university does not find the adequate jobs in the private sector anymore. So quite some challenges domestically. On the other hand, there's a China that is no more reform and openness that it once was, but very clearly about we're now security and control. A China that is more and more repressive domestically and assertive abroad. A China that has very strategically, the last 20 to 30 years, managed to reduce its dependencies on the world, but has increased strategically our dependencies on China, or the world's dependencies on China. Just look at the topic of critical raw materials. Since 20 years, China has bought mine after mine after mine globally, takes the raw material, processes it in China, and has the monopoly for some of the critical raw materials, like, for example, lithium, for clean technologies, if you take an important topic. This is the reason why I said we have to de-risk, not decouple from China. Not decouple because it would not be in our interest, and I think it is not viable, but de-risk very clearly. And I'm very glad that this is common position, not only in the European Union, but also in the G7 now. So you have to get China right to deal with it.
Time's up apparently, but I have to ask you, are you going to run again for President of the European Commission?
Typically I say nice try when this question comes. Today I have, unfortunately, to tell you this will not be decided tonight here at POLITICO neither. I had already one question where I said we will not decide it tonight and not discuss it tonight. So unfortunately, I have to leave you with that big question mark.
All right. Thank you so much, President. And now we will reveal the top doer, dreamer, and disruptor in Europe for 2024 on the screen, on the screens. No one's perfect. As we said, it's not an endorsement, it's not an award, we're just recognizing power. Thank you very much.
This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.